All right. Welcome. Tonight we're going to continue our look at Daniel, and tonight we're going to try to look at the prophecies in Daniel, not in detail, but to get an overview of the messages that are in the prophecies. And one thing I'll point out is the book of Daniel is essentially written as a book to encourage holy ones of God to be faithful through persecution. But it's very much the same type of book as the book of Revelation. The purpose is essentially the same. And so the prophecies are going to focus on approximately the same kind of thing. So we looked last time at that Daniel is overlapping with Jeremiah and Ezekiel, but we're looking at Daniel today. Last time we looked at the lessons from the story, at least some of the major lessons. And what we're going to find is that some of these exact same lessons are in the prophecies as well. But we're not going to mention all of these, even though these lessons may be in the prophecies. But we're going to also look at some others that I don't mention here. The major prophecies in the book of Daniel, we have Nebuchadnezzar's dreams in chapter 2, the statue that was made out of the different metals. In chapter 4, the tree that gets chopped down. And in the chapters 7, 8, 9, and 11, we have these visions of Daniel of the 4 beasts, the ram and the goat, the 70 weeks, and the wars between the north and south of Greece. And in chapter 12, connected with the prophecy in chapter 11, we have also the prophecy of the resurrection. All right, but one of the lessons that we see in these prophecies is that the kingdoms of men do not last. And we're going to look at some of the passages in these different prophecies that teach these lessons. In chapter 2, in the vision that Nebuchadnezzar had, or the dream he had of the statue, and the explanation of it in verses 39 and 40, he's told, "But after you shall arise another kingdom inferior to yours, then another, a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom shall be as strong as iron, inasmuch as iron breaks in pieces and shatters everything. And like iron that crushes, that kingdom will break in pieces and crush all the others." So we see that one kingdom takes over from another. This fourth kingdom is going to crush the other kingdoms. And so these kingdoms of men do not last. In chapter 8, in the vision of the ram and the goat, Daniel sees that the goat comes from the west without touching the ground, and he has this notable horn between his eyes. In verse 6, "Then he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing beside the river, and ran at him with furious power. And I saw him confronting the ram. He was moved with rage against him, attacked the ram, and broke his 2 horns. There was no power in the ram to withstand him, but he cast him down to the ground and trampled him." So we see that the ram is cast down. And then in verse 8, "Therefore the male goat grew very great, but when he became strong, the large horn was broken." So something about this one is being broken and not lasting. And when you get down to verses 20 through 22, it says, "The ram which you saw having the 2 horns, they are the kings of Media and Persia, and the male goat is the kingdom of Greece. The large horn that is between its eyes is the first king. As for the broken horn and the 4 that stood up in its place, 4 kingdoms shall arise out of that nation, but not with its power." So you see the kingdom of Greece taking over, casting down Media and Persia. And then that horn is broken, and 4 kingdoms arise out of that nation, out of Greece. And so one thing is taken over by another in the kingdoms of men. The kingdoms of men do not last. But another lesson we have connected to that is that God's kingdom lasts forever. In Daniel 2, back to the vision of the statue, in verse 44, it says, "In the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to another people. It shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever." In chapter 7, in the vision of the 4 beasts, in verses 13 and 14, it says, "I was watching in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man, coming with the clouds of heaven. He came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. Then to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom the one which shall not be destroyed." And so the kingdoms of men do not last, but God's kingdom lasts forever. And we find that God rules over the kingdom of men. In chapter 4, in the vision of the tree that's cut down, in verse 17, it says, "This decision is by the decree of the watchers, and the sentence by the word of the holy ones, in order that the living may know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men, gives it to whomever he will, and sets over it the lowest of men." Down in verse 25, it says, "They shall drive you from men. Your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field, and they shall make you eat grass like oxen. They shall wet you with the dew of heaven, and 7 times shall pass over you, till you know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men, and gives it to whomever he chooses." And then down in verse 32, "And they shall drive you from men, and your dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field," and so on, until you know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men, and gives it to whomever he chooses. So a very consistent message in that vision. God rules over the kingdom of men, and gives it to whomever he chooses. But one of the very basic ideas in these prophecies is that God knows the future. In chapter 7, in the vision of the 4 beasts, in verse 23 through 25, thus he said, "The 4th beast shall be a 4th kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all other kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, trample it, and break it in pieces. The 10 horns are 10 kings who shall arise from this kingdom, and another shall rise after them. He shall be different from the first ones, and shall subdue 3 kings. He shall speak pompous words against the Most High, shall persecute the saints of the Most High, and shall intend to change times and law. Then the saints shall be given into his hand for a time and times and half a time." Now, without even going into detail about what all of this means, what we get is that God is very specific in what is going to happen. He tells you the number of kings. There's going to be one that comes that will subdue 3 kings. And this one is going to persecute the saints and intend to change times and law. He's very specific about the timing and how many kings and all of these things. So even if we don't understand exactly what it's about, we can at least understand God knows the future. He really knows it in detail. In chapter 8, with the ram and the goat, in verse 20 through 22, we already looked at this, but just notice that he says the large horn that's between the eyes of the male goat is the first king of Greece. And then there's of the broken horn. So that first king is broken, and then 4 come up in its place. 4 kingdoms shall arise out of that nation, but not with its power. And that's exactly what we see happening with Greece, with Alexander the Great being the first king. And he died young, and then 4 kingdoms came out of it, at least 4, which another one of the wordings in the prophecy indicate there's more that happened with his territory than these 4 kingdoms. But this is what is focused on. And then in chapter 9, we have in verse 25 through 27 some very specific prophecies in this 70 weeks that gives the timing of when the Messiah is going to come. It talks about 7 weeks and 62 weeks, and after the 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off, and the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. So this is a prophecy of the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple after the death of Christ. And then he in verse 27, he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week he shall bring an end to sacrifice and offering, and so on. Now again, we may not understand every detail of this, or maybe you do. That's fine too. But one of the things we can get from it without understanding all the details is that God understood the details. He knew the future in detail. And he was not afraid to give the details of the future, of the timing, of the things that he wanted known. In chapter 11, we see more of this incredible detail. Just over and over again through chapter 11, the wars between the north and the south. And he talks about how after these 3 more kings arise in Persia after Darius, there's going to be this 4th one that will stir up all against the kingdom of Greece by his strength and riches. And then there's going to be a mighty king that arises, and that's Alexander the Great, I believe is what he's talking about there. And then in verse 4, when he has arisen, his kingdom shall be broken up, divided toward the 4 winds of heaven, but not among his posterity. It's not going to go to his children, and that was true, nor according to his dominion with which he ruled, for his kingdom shall be uprooted even for others besides these. So these 4 kingdoms that come out of it don't cover the entire territory Alexander ruled. So there were others besides these 4 that took over from his territory. But even down in verse 30, it talks about ships from Cyprus will come against him. And this is looking far into the future, but such detail is given that it's just incredible. We can see God knows the future in detail. God knows the future. So God also punishes nations or rulers who directly rebel against him. Now, what I mean by directly rebel, I think we'll see in what we look at here. In chapter 7, in verses 9 through 12, talks about when the Ancient of Days comes and they bring out the books. There's a court there. He's putting the nations on trial. In verse 11, it says, I watched then because of the sound of the pompous words which the horn was speaking. I watched till the beast was slain, and its body was destroyed and given to the burning flame. As for the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. So we see that the beast, which is Rome, but it has this horn, which is one of the kings, speaking pompous words against God. And so that beast is killed because of that. He's directly rebelling against God, and he is punished. He's killed. Its body is destroyed, given to the burning flame. The other beasts, which are Babylon, Medo-Persian Empire, and Greece, they were not so directly in rebellion against God, at least not in the vision here. And so for them, their dominion was taken away, but their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. They didn't get the same kind of punishment that the one who would speak pompous words against God received. Now, we do have in chapter 7, this is the same one, but in verse 25 and 26, he shall speak pompous words against the Most High, shall persecute the saints of the Most High, and so on. He's really directly trying to fight against God. But in verse 26, the court shall be seated, and they shall take away his dominion to consume and destroy it forever. So God is punishing these that are rebelling against him. In chapter 8, in verse 25, this is talking about when the four divisions of Greece are there, and one of the kings during that time, through his cunning he shall cause deceit to prosper under his rule, and he shall exalt himself in his heart. He shall destroy many in their prosperity. He shall even rise against the prince of princes, which I believe that's probably the high priest. It could be also just one of the rulers among the Jews, but he shall be broken without human means. All right, but whatever the specifics are, we see that he's directly rebelling against God, raising himself up, exalting himself, but God is going to punish him. All right, now another lesson that we see in the prophecies in Daniel is that the Messiah is coming to bring an end to sins, make reconciliation for iniquity, and bring in everlasting righteousness. He would be cut off, but not for himself. So basically, the gospel is in this message. The Messiah is coming. In chapter 9, verse 24 through 26, 70 weeks are determined for your people and for your holy city to finish the transgression, to make an end of sins, to make reconciliation for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. So know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublesome times. And after the 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. The end of it shall be with a flood until the end of the war desolations are determined. All right, so we see the Messiah is going to come. And somehow he's going to make an end of sins, make a reconciliation for iniquity, bring in everlasting righteousness, and so on. And we find out he's going to die. He's going to be cut off. And that's actually how he's going to accomplish it. It's not for himself. He's not dying because of his own sin, essentially. He's doing this for others. And he's doing it to make an end of sins, reconcile for iniquity, and bring in everlasting righteousness. So we have a picture of the gospel even here in this prophecy in Daniel. In chapter 12, he talks about the resurrection, and here let's just look in verse 2. Many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, some to shame and everlasting contempt. But this idea that some will have everlasting life How is that accomplished? Well, it's going to be accomplished because of the Messiah who's coming, who will bring reconciliation, bring an end to sin, and bring in everlasting righteousness. So that's how that's going to be accomplished. But we see it can be done, it will be done, and so that's going to be done through the Messiah. All right, so in this book, the purpose of the book of Daniel is the same as the purpose of the book of Revelation, to encourage God's saints to be faithful through persecution and death, because it's going to happen multiple times. He mentions multiple persecutions that they're going to go through, and yet we find that they need to be faithful through it. They need to keep wisdom. And the things that help them and help us to go through persecution, the same thing that the book of Revelation talks about, knowing that God rules over the nation helps to be faithful. Even when the nations are being evil, we know God rules over them. Knowledge that God's kingdom is eternal helps us, because we know they cannot destroy his kingdom, no matter what they do. Knowledge that God knows the future very specifically helps. He's not hoping that things are going to turn out well. He knows exactly how things are going to go. And knowledge of the end of the persecuting nations and rulers helps. When you see that they will be punished, it helps you. If they're killing you, if they're persecuting you, and you know what their end is, well, then it helps you to be faithful. And knowledge of the Messiah coming helps, because of course, we are after the Messiah has come. But if you know that the Messiah is coming before that time, that helps you to be faithful through all of these things, because it brings hope of eternal life. And so this knowledge of the resurrection and eternal life helps. And so you have all of these wonderful things in the book of Daniel, and it's there to encourage these saints to be faithful through persecution, just like the book of Revelation did the same thing for those who were going through the persecution under the early years of the church. We'll just put it that way. But it's a wonderful book, and hopefully you can get some help in just seeing these major themes as you go back and look at it in more detail. All right, thank you.